Right. Well, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our virtual training where we'll be focusing on the intersection of housing and food insecurity. I am Elizabeth Tuen and I'm joined by my Food Council colleagues, Anne-Marie Hart Bookbinder, Cynthia Questis, and Allison Schnitzer. And before we get started with our programming, we just wanted to jump in with some quick housekeeping notes. This training is being recorded, so we are going to be sharing this with any of the folks who join us today. We do invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat box with your name and your organization. We are going to be sharing all of this information with you in a follow-up to today's training. So that means all of the presentation slides will be sent to you, as well as a link to the recording of this, and any follow-up resources, any questions that we weren't able to get to or answer straight away. So be on the lookout for that. And I think with that, we can dive into our programming. So we're here once again because of the feedback that we received from all of you about the issues that you face when serving our community members who are experiencing food insecurity. We all recognize that locating food is just one of the many challenges that our underserved community members face. And so often it's people experiencing food insecurity because they're putting their limited resources towards housing costs, which we all recognize are astronomical here in Montgomery County. So our goal today is to provide you with a roadmap of housing support in the county so that you leave here with the resources you need to help clients facing a housing crisis. So with that, we will jump into our presentations. Our first presenter today is Lorraine Driscoll, who is a public affairs officer at the Montgomery County Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Lorraine might look familiar to some of you. She has joined our community calls in the past to talk about COVID-19 programs for renters. And she will be covering the county resources available to those who are currently housed, with a focus on assistance for renters. So Lynn, would you like to take it away?
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute button. All right, let me share the slides, hopefully. All right, is that working?
You're good, Lorraine.
I'm not seeing it, are you?
Yep, I'm seeing it, Lorraine, you're good.
Okay, great. So I'll just start running through it. Great. So first of all, I just wanted to tell you folks how happy I am to be with this network. This is one of the networks that has done more than any other to get information out to renters. You guys have been so helpful in sharing information with the flyers or through electronic means and such. And I celebrate the work you're doing to work with people who are more vulnerable than ever for a whole host of reasons, and to try to lift people up and create more security. So first, I just want to say how pleased I am to be with you today. And then, you know, as Elizabeth was saying, this situation for renters during COVID is informed by what people are already dealing with, which is really high rents. We know that more than 20,000 renter households are severely rent burdened. They're earning up to $30,000 a year, and they're paying more than half their income for rent. So that is that was already there, and then with all the COVID related challenges, it's you know, and then you know, obviously, to state the obvious, many lost jobs. illness, cared for family members, et cetera. And based on surveys of some apartment properties, we estimate 15,000, maybe 15 to 20,000 county households are behind in rent, with average arrears around $10,000. And so what we're encouraging people is to apply for rental assistance and access free help from support organizations to help them navigate this very difficult, all these steps you have to do to maintain housing, and to get free help, free legal help to avoid eviction. So right, the main things is we currently have this rental assistance available. There'll be more. There'll be an updated program, free legal help, and free assistance from these support organizations. So for the rent relief program, that program is in place through the end of this calendar year, and it'll be replaced by another. And so those eligibility criteria are, COVID related income loss and, certain income, et cetera. But the HHS program has consistently said, just tell people to apply, because people are thinking, I don't qualify. Like our support organizations met someone who works at a construction site, and they thought you didn't qualify if you didn't have kids, or, so these, questions are out there. So we're telling people, if you're not sure, apply. So anyway, that's the COVID rent relief programs up to $12,000 in back rent. And then for some people with very low income, additional funds for some forward rent. There's a temporary closure of that program, closing at 5 p.m. on December 31st because of changes in the federal guidelines. So we need to, every application received by that deadline will be reviewed and processed. Funds are still available in the program to take care of applicants. We think that many of those funds will be, used by those who have applied in that session. But we want to get the word out to renters who have not yet applied to go ahead and apply before December 31st. And then a new round of rent relief will be announced very early in 2022. And that may have some different, eligibility and other things. Hopefully a slightly more user-friendly portal, but the county executive asked for and council approved 34 million more in emergency rent relief. So that's available. And, but anyway, in the meantime, we want to anybody who has not yet applied to get their applications in before December 31st. And what we've been finding is that people who are finding themselves in court, half of them have not applied for rent assistance. So we think, oh, sure, people have heard, but as people in trauma who are just trying to get by, these difficult circumstances may not have heard. So we have a lot of this information on what we call our renters webpage, montgomerycountymd.gov/renters. And on that page, we list the support organizations, the legal assistance organizations, and then the steps people should take to maintain housing, apply for rent assistance, contact a support organization, and what to do if you get a court summons or a judgment. And what we want people to do is, please don't self-evict, please don't move, leave. But that's a very tough thing because people are getting bombarded with forms and they're waiting for rent assistance, and landlords are getting impatient. And so anyway, that's partly why we want people to call these support organizations or call legal help. They can tell them, here's where you are in the process. You're still good. Please stay where you are. And the challenge is, if they leave their house, if they leave their apartment before they get rent assistance, that bill will follow them around and make it very difficult for them to be able to rent another property. It's, just another challenge. So we are trying to reach people to urge them to stay housed. These are the flyers that many of you have been distributing, that I'm so grateful. The school system and MCPS, Montgomery College, apartment buildings, and others also have been distributing them, but the Food Network's been huge. And we've been doing additional communications and outreach, in apartment buildings, social media, webinars for tenants, et cetera, et cetera. And in the context of all that communication and outreach, many renters have applied for rental assistance. So this is what they call the HHS Pulse report. my Montgomery County webpage, which is updated every week. So you can see that over 10,000 have applied, which is good. As I said, we think there's 15,000, possibly as many as 20,000 who need help. So we're reaching people, but we need to reach more. And many renters have received rental assistance, and HHS is moving as quickly as they can, meeting federal guidelines to keep getting those applications processed. And so even with all this outreach, though, many renters who likely qualify for rental assistance have not yet applied. And so we really want to keep reaching more people. At the same time, you know, if we just think about, you know, you guys deal with the food, which is obviously critical, but think about all the stresses on people's shoulders right now. So the applying for the rent assistance and everything else, and then you get bombarded with these forms. And so one of the things, however, one of the forms is a good one. So there's a county council passed a new law that if you're behind on rent and you're getting late fees and you meet certain conditions, modest income, county resident, some COVID related impact, you know, it could be, you know, almost everybody, whatever. If you take that form and sign it and give it to your landlord, your past late fees and future late fees for, you know, a while will have to be lifted. And so that's one way to get something off the platter. So I am hoping to get a flyer put together on that really soon that we can start getting out, and I'll probably work through Elizabeth to share that with you in case any of you would want a very simple English Spanish flyer with the form on the back. And then there are a lot of forms that are very scary and causing people to self-evict. One is this, and there's the notice of intent to file and the notice to vacate, neither of which are eviction notices. The notice of intent to file a complaint for summary ejectment is a new form that landlords must give renters before they take them to court for failure to pay rent. And they can give that to them when they're 1 day late on rent. But the notion is that it gives renters 10 days to pay the back rent so that they don't go to court. But unfortunately, the language is so scary that some people are thinking, do I have to leave? Separately, there's something called notice to vacate. If the landlord says, you know, here your lease is running out, notice to vacate, again, it's not an eviction notice. And so we want people to call a support organization, or, you know, on these forms, we call 311 and ask for a landlord tenant office. They're expert at helping people understand the whole renter process. And in general, renters cannot be forced to move from their home. That cannot be evicted unless there's a court order and the sheriff is present. So that, you know, people do have time, call a support organization, call Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, find out what your situation is.
Chief of Finance and Operations, Dr. Eugenie Dawson, as her designee. Dr. Dawson has assigned me the responsibility to conduct this hearing, provide her with a written summary.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
I didn't hear that, sorry. So then, so that's for people who are not in the heavy eviction process yet. Then, but then if their landlord calls them to court, and these cases are moving through the courts now, they may get a summons to go to court. If they get a summons, we want them to call for free legal help before their court date, because there might be a problem with the summons. They might not have given them that ejectment form. They might not have whatever. There might be a way to delay it. And what we want to do is try to give people time to get the rent assistance paid to their landlord and, you know, have them be able to stay housed. So we want them to call for free legal help before their court date, then attend court so that they can, you know, challenge anything. Maybe their landlord didn't do it right. Maybe they want to get the paperwork, but they need to call for legal help ahead, just in case. And then thirdly, we want them to apply for rent assistance. Like I said, half of people being called to court have not yet applied. So on our renters website, montgomerycountymd.gov/renters, we list all the legal help organizations, and they are very much very responsive. So then And then this information this is just a screenshot of like the information on what you should do is one of the three things at the top of the renter's page. So if you receive a court summons or judgment, very clearly, do this, do this, do this, take these steps, please. Moving along, if you've already been to court and you got us, your landlord won the case, they then will ask the sheriff to put a note on your door. And those used to be 6-7 weeks. Now they're more like 4 weeks. They're moving faster. If you get this notice on your door, you should contact HHS to get your rent assistance expedited, or if you've had a court judgment against you, even before the notice shows up on your door, you should call HHS to get the rent assistance application expedited. So a renter can call 311 to get into HHS, or they can, if they've been in contact with their person at HHS, their caseworker, call them, or they can call a support organization. They have a direct line into HHS to say, hey, I've got this case, we got to move. So for tenants receiving court judgments or eviction notices who come to court or connect with the county or support organization or legal organization, DHCA, where the housing department where I work, the county health department, HHS, the support organizations, and the legal organizations are all collaborating to speed rental assistance and provide legal guidance and representation to help tenants avoid eviction and maintain housing. So if they can just dive in and get to somebody, the wheels will turn. So again, I want to thank all of you for your support. We still need to do more to reach renters who might not be aware of available resources and supports. For example, right now there's rental assistance up to $12,000. The pause is temporary. Another program will be opening up with probably some slightly different elements to it. Hopefully that'll make it more available to some people who couldn't before. We'll see. There's free legal help, and we want people to call ahead of their court date so they bring the right paperwork or they know what they're doing when they get there, and a lawyer will accompany them if they have a case, and free assistance from support organizations because this whole process is so difficult. But if you connect with a support organization and they are working with you, they will guide a renter every step of the way. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I think everyone here is just so very grateful for the support that the county really does provide in these situations. I think we're so fortunate to have those resources at our disposal. And I just wanted to echo what Lynn said, that we are here to provide any of that information to you all. So Lynn will be in touch with us. If any of the information there is something you would like, the flyers, that kind of thing, please let us know. We want to sort of keep that communication open. Are there any questions for Lynn before we move on? We're just about on time with our schedule of speakers today, and I'm not sure if I see any in the chat at the moment, but keep in mind that we will save some time at the end for questions as well. So if you have—
Sorry, excuse me, Elizabeth, there is one question. Someone direct messaged me, sorry. What happens if someone is denied? Can this person apply again or appeal? And what is the timeline to do so after they are denied?
So I think the question is if they're denied by HHS, if they didn't meet the qualifications, and HHS, my sense is they are looking every way they can to help people qualify within the federal rules. Look at income for the last month, look at income for the last year, look at, different ways to qualify. If they don't, I would suggest that, first of all, HHS has emergency housing services separate from the federal COVID rules. And so they should contact housing support services around that. But they may also want to, sorry, this sunlight is funny. They may also want to contact a support organization because they might just be able to hear their story and think about it more broadly from an HHS perspective. So I would say, if it were me, I would contact both. HHS has resources and the support organizations are dealing with every element of this. They're right now advocating that the county please find a way to help people who are carrying those bills because they moved out and they didn't know what to do. I don't know if that's addressable, but the support organizations are looking at it very broadly. So.
Thank you for that, Lynn. It sounds like the real message here is like to tell people is to really stay engaged, you know, no matter how scary the process may seem, no matter how onerous the forms may be, that there are these support services here to help you stay engaged so that you can find a good outcome, and that people are here to see you through all of the steps along the way. Thank you so much for that. So we are going to now turn to our next speaker, Lynn Rose, who is going to be touching on some resources for those who are facing homelessness. So Lynn is the Community Engagement Manager for the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless, and provides awareness and designs routes for communities to be part of ending homelessness for people. She is also a past participant in our food security community calls, and we thank her for her continued support in sharing information with you about homelessness issues in our communities. So welcome, Lynn. I'm going to share my screen and your slides, so bear with me while I do that.
Sure. And while you do that, I just want to offer my thanks to both Lorraine for a fantastic presentation of what our county has available and the many ways it really is really working to try and help every single person possible who's here. It's pretty inspiring. And Food Council, you guys are phenomenal. You know, I talk to a lot of people in my role, and I hold up both homelessness and food security as two areas where our county just seems to be doing so many things right. So thanks to each of you for making that happen on a regular basis and do the pieces. I'm going to talk a little bit about housing resources for people facing homelessness. Go ahead and flip the screen.
See, I can't, are you able to?
I can see.
Okay.
I assume everyone else can. Okay. So when I was in college in the dark ages, there was a building that I had a lot of classes in, and it had a massive mastodon. And this thing was huge. I'm sure it was very popular with parents and donors and administration, but for students, it was a major obstacle to go around. And for people like me who are time optimists and are perhaps not early for things, it was a major obstacle. And so I just want to offer any conversation about homelessness and housing. We cannot ignore the mastodon. It's bigger than an elephant, which is why I use mastodon, right? The big mastodon in the room in the discussion from the largest level is we lack actual units of housing, not just what we understand as affordable, but many of the other layers of working people and middle-class people. We just lack actual units of housing. So I don't think it's fair to come to a conversation about housing resources without saying, hey, there's a mastodon in our community and in many, many others in our region and in our nation. It's really crippling, and it hinders us in many ways. So again, not to be to start with something unfortunate, but that's what we're looking for. So help comes from walking through the right door, identifying the problem. Everyone knows this, and my work as social worker, that's the first thing you do. You've got to have a good needs assessment to really understand what the problem is, or you're going to solve the wrong one. And that's really true for folks, food assistance providers who have people coming to them say, hey, I need some help with housing. Well, figuring out what kind of help people need really is the very first thing that you need to do. Because as Lorena was talking about, one, there's lots of resources available, but it's a little bit tricky and it's a little bit scary. And usually the people that are actually coming for food assistance, they're already so stretched and so stressed that they're not thinking about the planning they need to do. They're thinking, how do I survive myself and my family this day? And so for any of those food assistance providers, if you really want to address housing, there needs to be some kind of conversation where you're helping people connect to the system. And that might be, I just worked with a food assistance provider who popped up during COVID, and they wanted to pivot a little bit from just distribution to distribution plus some focused supports. And so really encourage them, well, if you want to do that, you're going to have make some connections and have a little arm that offers a conversation to people where you're connecting them with those supports and resources. You're explaining to them it's going to take a minute, but there's people to help you. Because if they're coming to you as a food assistance provider, they see you as someone that's providing them help. And so you probably have a step that's even before the amazing county resources and all the organizations that they've set up to walk people through the process. So don't ignore that as an opportunity. And then the question is someone really experiencing official homelessness? What does that mean? Well, I have to again be real with you. In our county and many others, unless you are actually out of your house in crisis, that's when the homeless service systems, because there's lots of other systems to help you stay in your house. And that's really what we want to do as a community. We want people to stay in our house. But there's certain situations where you are now out of that house. So what happens then? The first thing is connecting people to help. And again, just like the rental assistance and the legal help, sometimes people need someone to sit with them while they do this. You can call 311 if someone is sitting with you and say, hey, I need help. I've been evicted. I have no safe places to go anymore. You can explain the situation and they will help you guide you through the next steps. There's other places. We actually in our county have a homeless resource hotline. 311 pretty much goes to that depending on the hours. But we've got some good phone numbers that, again, someone can call. But I don't want to minimize, they're going to need some help and support to even make that first call. County offices. We've got multiple county offices that are still functioning in some way, in a non-remote way, to access support and be that first enter door for people. And then the crisis center. After hours, they are going to provide that. And even during the hours, sometimes they're going to provide that. And then outreach teams. Our county has many things to end homelessness that are incredibly effective. One is outreach teams. These are two providers, two of my nonprofit partners, Every Mind and Bethesda Cares. They have whole teams of people that are literally going to the woods, going to the downtown and the other areas where they think people might be experiencing homelessness. And they're creating a connection with them so they can connect them to services and supports. In fact, our organization, we ended up working with someone that went from the woods in Rockville into an apartment. And in the woods, I got to tell you, he was a hot mess. In our apartment, he is doing great because his real problem was he needed a home. And now he needs a little bit of support to stay there, but problem solved. One of the things that's helpful to understand is help is organized by what's considered the household. So you've got families, which is parent with children or two parents with children, and then an individual, which is someone 18 over. So if perhaps you're a mom and your son is 20, guess what? You're going to be considered two individuals and you're likely going to get support to two different shelters. Not optimum, but it's helpful to know that before people kind of make that call and ask for that assistance. And the first step when you go in the door, again, our county is doing things that are incredibly effective. Our organization, our county, other organizations, we really have figured out what works. And the big first step is that assessment. We're evaluating needs and vulnerability. There's a lot of reasons we would do that, but really if someone has a cane, we need to know that. And then we need to maybe prioritize help for them quickly. Just like if you already have that sheriff's notice off, it's like, okay, we need to get to work. We need to solve this problem quicker than we do maybe for someone else to steal the home. Same thing. Every person experiencing homelessness gets added to our coordinated entry list. That's phenomenal because how on earth are we going to know who we're helping, who needs help, unless we have them all in one place? And so when we as a county ended veteran homelessness in 2016, we basically went to that list and saw all the veterans, found every single one of them and found a home and the right level of support for them. Because we had that, we could do that. And then the next step usually is directing them to shelter. We've got a men's shelter for the county. That's ours, MCCH's. Interfaith runs the women's shelter. There's several family shelters that are smaller. There's a domestic violence shelter. And then we run two veteran safe haven shelters. They're smaller shelters. Safe haven is a thing. It's like a smaller shelter with some extra support. And that helps people move forward faster. So what are actual solutions for people experiencing homelessness? And let me add, I didn't put the slide in here, but we as a county, even during the pandemic, have seen a decline in people's experiencing housing. Again, homelessness. Again, it's not taking away from that we've got a huge housing crisis. Oh, hang on one second. But we're really seeing some significant progress, and we want to keep going with that. And these are the solutions. Shelter, you got to start at shelter. Why do you have to start at shelter usually? Because we have so much there. We've got specialized staff, diversion staff, and housing locator, employment specialists. We've got service on site, medical care, mental health care. We've got a dentist that comes. We've got an employment lab with computers and things that people need to apply for jobs or get some training. So when they get back out there and get a job, they can get it at a higher level and be more housing secure. And community support. We have so many people in our community that help us with our meal program, with move-in kits, with the things that the guys need, and Interfaith as well, the other shelters as well. A shelter is a good place for the community to say, hey, I care about homelessness. I'm going to jump in and help. After shelter, people have several different options. One, independent living. A number of people need shelter support for a little bit of time, and they can go right into a home again, an apartment, a rented room. Rapid rehousing for folks that need some support on not a permanent level, but for a good long while until they get on their feet and can function independently again. And then permanent supportive housing. And that's a thing in homelessness and homelessness services. And it basically means you get rent support, so you're paying a third of your income, and a case manager, kind of that guide to help you develop and grow your skills, your resources, and all those things that you need to become fully independent. And we have about 522 households of permanent supportive housing. And we've got a new program, rapid rehousing, and we are working up to have 60 people there. The other thing that we do, and many other organizations do, is advocacy. We need to remind everyone in our county and even at the federal level that this is still a problem and it still needs resources. Homelessness is not the kind of thing people can solve on their own. I'm sorry, they just can't do it. They need people around them. And when we have it, most people will never return to homelessness. So it's an incredible return of an investment in terms of finances. And then the other thing that we are connected with an affiliate that secures affordable housing. We've got about 140 units. That's not even enough for the households we support. But again, let's go to that last slide, the mastodon in the room. Let's not pretend that really we're going to be successful about poverty and moving people forward in our community if we cannot figure out how to get many more units of housing. As a social worker, I spent a lot of time doing home visits, and in a wonderful way was able to see lots of different parts of this county. And let me tell you, there's lots of places where you have people living 1, 2, 3, 4 households to an apartment. That is the norm for people. One of my daughter's friends, she was in 11th grade before she and her family of 4 got to live in something besides a room. So again, we need to really look broadly at housing and understand that homelessness, where we're having some success, we've got some great county and nonprofit and community partners to kind of really target this, but we really need to pay attention to that mastodon too.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I meant to mention in my introduction that you are in fact a social worker, and you give this really great systematic overview of this issue, and we thank you for that. And for really making the point that, you know, it's the connection point with the people we serve. That's really probably one of the most crucial steps in all of this. I see a lot of familiar faces on the phone who are doing food distributions, and you are seen as that connection point for so many people. So we thank you for doing that, and we see how important it is to make those human connections to get them the information that they need. So
let me just add, Elizabeth, because I see, oops, I'm on my last minute of official time for this work.
No, I was going to open it up.
But again, a huge thank you to the food assistance providers. I remember when I started, and I've got these 522 households, even they're in a home, a lot of them are still food insecure, because if they're with us, they're making under $35,000 a year. So let's not pretend anyone can really live well on that, right? They're going to need that food support. And so I've got all these amazing food assistance providers, and then I've got these families who do not have cars, and these individuals who do not have cars. And so we created just a volunteer program I know lots of other places have done that, but we ended up using volunteers at Ubers to get from our food assistance locations to our homes. And we were really able to work very well with our fantastic food assistance providers to do a little, okay, if we're going to do 10 at once, how can you make that happen? So they were very flexible. And again, this partnership, this collaboration that allows us to make things happen in this county really does impact the day-to-day life of the people that we serve. It's huge.
It is. On that note, we are going to sort of take a quick veer off of our housing path to get more back into sort of the food part of this equation. Our next speaker is our very own Cynthia Questis, who works on food access initiatives here at the Food Council as part of the AmeriCorps Vista program. And she is also pursuing her master's degree in urban and regional planning at Georgetown. And she is very engaged in housing issues. She worked on the Hill for a number of years, focusing on housing and homeless issues, particularly for veterans in her home state of Hawaii. So truly engaged. And today she is going to be talking about some of the gaps we might see with those who are experiencing homelessness and who are struggling with how to access food. You don't have access to a kitchen. You can't prepare food that you get at a distribution site. So where can you go for help? And that is what Cynthia is going to cover today. So Cynthia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that very nice introduction. I'm so happy to be here. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you guys see it? All right, awesome. Thank you. Right, so for the interest of time, I'm just going to provide a very quick overview of food resources for individuals experiencing homelessness. So we have food organizations, talk about supplemental nutrition assistance programs, SNAP, and the newly implemented restaurant meals program. So food services, I wanted to highlight the COVID-19 consolidation hubs. So we currently have 8 across the county, and they're basically a partnership of community-based organizations and the Department of Human Services with the collaboration from other nonprofit partners. What's really great about the hubs is that they not only provide food, but they also provide other types of services like rental assistance, SNAP, and other case management services. Also want to quickly highlight the food pantries such as Capital Area Food Bank, Mana Food Center, and Nourish Now, and the local food organizations across the county that offer choice pantries, delivery, and grab and go services. And to find these local organizations, we have our food resource map. So the Montgomery County Food Resource Map, also known as FARD, lists more than 100 assistance sites in Montgomery County. It's searchable by location, food assistance, accessibility. So for example, right over here, we use the American Muslim Senior Society. Depending on your needs, we also list culturally appropriate foods, types of languages that they offer and they speak. And if you see on this side, it just kind of shows how it is when you pull it up. The map is updated quarterly. So every 3 months, or when an organization reaches out to us directly, feel free to contact me. If you have any questions about the FARD map, I'll share my contact info after this slide. Yep. So the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, it's considered the nation's most important anti-hunger program because it is the first line of defense against hunger. So currently Montgomery County has a pretty high SNAP gap of 64%. Before the pandemic, there were only 55,000 residents on SNAP, and now we currently have over 76,000 people receiving SNAP benefits. And so just a quick overview, who is eligible? Anyone who is a lawful permanent resident for 5 years, or a lawful permanent resident any period of time with a disability, refugees or asylum seekers, children under 18, regardless of their parents' citizenship status. Just wanted to highlight that head of household do not need a social security number to apply for SNAP benefits. Income, typically you must be below your state's poverty line. We included a pre-screener here to see if you qualify for SNAP benefits, and we'll share this with you after this presentation. And people who aren't eligible for SNAP are full-time college students, non-citizens with work visas, and non-citizens who do not meet the criteria above. And I just kind of wanted to talk about the Mythbusters about people experiencing homelessness. So I think one of them is an affidavit needed for individuals experiencing homelessness to apply for benefits. So an affidavit is not necessary. However, I know there is a barrier for people experiencing homelessness. How do they access their EBT card, their SNAP card, since it has to be mailed to a physical address? So here are some points below of how they can access that through a shelter. They can use their shelter's address, a nonprofit organization or social worker assisting with their SNAP benefit application. And then I know that the Tacoma East Silver Spring Community Action Center also helps provide some sort of address for people who are experiencing homelessness and want to apply for SNAP benefits. And then last but not least, I quickly want to talk about the state of Maryland's newly implemented restaurant meals program. So it allows SNAP recipients who are homeless, disabled, or elderly over 60 to purchase prepared meals at authorized and participating restaurants in Maryland. Just wanted to highlight that the restaurant in Maryland has to be participating. Since the program is in its early stages, a list of participating restaurants will be listed on the RMP website. Here's a link on the right-hand side. So it just offers a flexibility for people who can't access a kitchen or a house to cook their meals, to purchase hot meals. So yeah, and here's just a simple infographic from the RMP website about how people with SNAP benefits can use their EBT card to purchase food. And here's our contact info. I just wanted to share that I work with Allison Schnitzer, who is a Food Access Initiatives Manager here at the Food Council, and we are currently taking SNAP applications. So here's a Google form if you know anybody who's interested in our contact information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you for that important information about sort of plugging some of these gaps when possible. We understand the difficulties in getting folks signed up for SNAP and for educating people about the benefits that are available. And so we thank you for some of that information, especially this restaurant meals program, which could really serve to help folks who are caught in those emergency gap situations. So thank you for that work. If there are any questions in the chat, let's just take a brief pause to see anything there. We do welcome you to reach out to us with any of those SNAP questions, because this is a program that we are building and very excited about here at the Food Council. But then let's move on. Rounding out our discussions today is Grace Higgins, who is the Housing and Community Development Manager for the City of Tacoma Park. She's responsible for the city's rental housing and grants program, in addition to implementing a variety of housing related projects that benefit city residents. As a resident of Tacoma Park, I'm very proud of the work that she does for our people here. She is also a member of the Food Council and chairs our SNAP working group. And she will be here helping us to look at issues of homelessness on a sort of longer term basis, how we can help to build economic stability to fight this mastodon in the room, as Lynn so eloquently put. So Grace, take it away.
So thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And so, you know, my role for today, I'm a housing practitioner, and I've been doing it for a really long time. And I just want to encourage everybody who's on this call, no matter where you serve, both on the food side or the housing side, to really take in what's going on in not only our region, but across our country. What I usually tell folks is without housing, nothing else works. And it helps to really center people, especially folks who are in the field, who are helping people, but it's also important for the people that you work with so that they understand what is at stake. And so I was invited to join this panel because I really want to bring this home. And I think Lynn made the really incredible point. If you're doing anything around housing and food, you really need to push wherever you can to encourage Montgomery County to build more housing. There just is not enough housing to support folks at different income levels. And where we're missing these folks, they will eventually, and this is the a culmination of what I believe to be kind of the tipping point. People are going to be evicted. It's going to start in 2022. I can almost guarantee it. This is the first wave, and kudos to the county and Lynn and the county Department of Health and Human Services. But that only stops things for a moment. Many of our families will never regain the traction that they had both financially as well as just from a stability standpoint, and we have to be realistic. So if there is a way for you to connect people with services and really make strong connections, just don't send them out. You really do need to know who's doing what in your community, because you may not get a second bite at the apple with some of these residents. They call once, the call drops or something happens, they get distracted. And this is not the only issue that our poor families are dealing with. This is 1 in 15. It's not the biggest issue. And so when you have their attention, I would strongly recommend that you take that time to work through the bigger holistic issues. So what do you mean by that, Grace? And why are you putting a dark cloud on this wonderful conversation? The dark cloud is because in my years of experience with working with lower wealth people, this is the time of year when families overspend to the max. They will use their rent money and their utility money and all of their extra money to make Christmas for their kids, to have a really great Thanksgiving. We're coming up on other holidays that folks celebrate, and they want to overspend. And they're also thinking about their tax return. So tax season is the one time in the entire year that poor families get more money at one time than they will ever have in a 12-month cycle. And so for those families, often they neglect their rent or some other bill because they're expecting to get their tax return in late January, early February. I had a call yesterday with a resident where I told her, she was like, well, when I get my tax return, and I said, when you get your tax return, don't touch that money. You have no money, you need to save. And our families need to be thinking about how they can either get ahead with that tax money, put money in a bank for savings if they're banked, but really thinking about the future. It's going to be a rough 12 months ahead. And so, I want everybody on this call to kind of get ready to deal with the second or third wave, depending on when you started, of folks who are going to need help. Taxes are a big deal. I would strongly recommend that folks go to free tax preparation sites and encourage clients, if you're working with them, to get their taxes done for free. Often those sites provide additional supportive services. So while you're there, you may have an opportunity as a client to apply for food stamps, SNAP, or WIC, or some kind of other safety net program. And we want to connect people in ways that we haven't connected with them before. The biggest predator in our system is a paid service to do taxes. And our families often go there because they may be able to get an advance, or there are other incentives for them to go, but that's their money. And we want to make sure that our families are focused going into this next round. At the city of Tacoma Park, we're helping people over and above what the county is doing. We're clearing water bills. And we're not just talking about renters. I've been working with folks who are low-income homeowners who have been in mortgage forbearance. They've had outstanding utility bills, and we're closing the gap and clearing those balances. We're also working with the Salvation Army. They have a pot of money up to $500 to help people who are behind in their utilities. It all matters, because if families are spending money on other things, they are often neglecting themselves with food security, because they'll say, well, I've got to pay this and that cell phone bill and other responsibilities, and they're not thinking about the bigger picture. But because we're on the front line, and many of you I know, we have to start talking to our families and individuals in a more holistic way to ensure that they don't fall through the cracks, because they will. This is the time where these kinds of things happen. So, if you want to learn more about free tax preparation sites in your area, my friend Maureen Lorenas over at the Test Center does a phenomenal job with the county in organizing free tax preparation. AARP also does a great job. We do it on site here in Tacoma Park. We actually did it during COVID. And you don't have to be a Tacoma Park resident. So if you have clients that are in and around kind of the down county area, please come to our AARP tax site. And you don't have to be over a certain age, just over 18 and a taxpayer. And they will be able to help you with that as well. But I really want people to keep their eyes on the ball. Remember, especially folks on this call, remember what it was like before COVID. Our families were struggling even then. And so again, it's pulling it together for them and helping them to think ahead so that they can continue to live in our incredibly rich county. I always tell people, if they lose this housing, more times than not, they're not going to be in Montgomery County going forward. Or if they are, and a couple of my colleagues on the panel mentioned living in a room. And that is a difficult situation at best. And I can't remember who said it, but I think it was Lynn, but that's just not acceptable for our families. And last but not least, because I want to finish, because I know we're running out of time, keep in mind that when families go to court, they get something called a landlord and tenant registry record, which means that a prospective landlord, the next landlord, when they look at Grace Wiggins, they are also looking at a secret registry to determine whether or not I've been a defendant in a landlord and tenant case. Here at the city, and I know across the county, my colleagues and I are working to prevent people from having to go to court. Because even if we're able to save them by paying the back rent, their names will still appear as a defendant. And some landlords will use that as a basis to disqualify people from new housing. It is also another reason why, when you fall behind in rent, especially for folks who are behind, we have to help them, because when they do find new housing, the first thing a new landlord will say is, let me talk to your previous landlord. And if they've left with an outstanding balance or some issue, they will not get a favorable recommendation for a new place. So keeping people in place is going to be really important, but it's even more important to help people before they get to that critical stage where they're a part of a public record around eviction for whatever reason, whether it's non-payment of rent or tenant holding over. We want to do our best to preserve our families. And the best way to do it is the work that you're doing, but also looking at it holistically and which families can possibly rebound from going to court and which can't. So with that, I'll leave it and turn it back over to you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Grace. And thank you again for providing that sort of big picture for us. I feel like these training sessions are so valuable because of our fantastic speakers who can really help us appreciate this issue from so many different angles. When we spoke to Grace initially, the tax preparation issue never crossed my mind. And it's been such a great education to see how these kinds of resources and assistance we can provide can really help to elevate people and bring them out of this cycle that Grace is touching on, that really can really follow you if we don't help as soon as we possibly can. Grace, we are going to hopefully provide some information to folks about the AARP tax preparation information and things like that in our follow-up email. So be on the lookout for that. And if I'm looking at the chat now, if you have any questions for our panelists right now, we do have a few minutes to engage them. If you've had experiences, oh, please, Grace, go ahead.
I also just went, and I forgot, I should have looked at my notes, so that's my fault. Let me also say this. If you are a housing practitioner and you're working with people around housing issues, make sure you connect with a nonprofit or some other entity that understands housing law. The biggest mistake that I've seen during this pandemic is that there are folks who want to dabble in housing because they work on some other area of kind of poverty related issues. The worst way to jeopardize someone's housing is to not know the housing that they live in or the program that they're a part of, and what their rights and responsibilities are. Not everybody lives in the same type of housing. So I will strongly encourage you, if you don't know, contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant in Montgomery County. Feel free to call the City of Tacoma Park, because we actually have rent stabilization, which is a separate kind of affordability program. But many of our families that are living in affordable housing are living in tax credit programs or project-based or scattered site Section 8, or they have a Section 8 voucher or some other program administered by HOC. And when you lose these affordable housing programs, for whatever reason, it is incredibly hard to get back into these programs. And so I'll give you a quick example and then I'll stop talking. Anybody that comes through the doors here and they tell me that they're a part of an affordable program like the Housing Choice Voucher Program, that's often known as the Section 8 program, they become my priority, because that program has especially if it's tenant-based, meaning it goes with you wherever you go, it's the one program that if you lose it, you will never get it back in your lifetime. And so if you're working with people around housing, don't do anything without talking to a housing practitioner. Even if you think you know the answer, call somebody just to get another ear to listen to what the fact pattern is. You don't want to destroy a family's life by not knowing the rules of that program. So that's it for me.
Thank you for that. I also just wanted to note in the chat, Carmen, thank you for sharing information about the Housing Initiative Partnership. And we will share the information there with the phone number in our follow-up as well. If there are no other questions for our panelists, I did want to say a special thank you to them for participating today, for their expertise, for sharing all of this knowledge. So special thanks to Lynn and Lorraine and Cynthia and Grace. This is the last official event for our food security team this year, I believe. So I just wanted to thank all of you for your participation in the last year in our community calls and in these virtual trainings. We look forward to seeing you in the new year. We wish you all a very happy new year. Our next food security call will be on January 10th. So be on the lookout for that information from us, as well as all of this follow-up information. While I'm gabbing here, I really should launch our evaluation survey, which we do at the end of all of these. I'll just leave this up as we're wrapping up, and we ask that you fill it out. We do try to respond to your comments, so please, honest and feedback is always appreciated. I believe that I haven't seen any more questions, so that will wrap up our program for today. We'll stay on the line for a couple minutes if anything comes to you, but thanks again to all of you for participating. And did I launch the poll? Yes, the poll is up. So if you could fill that out for us, and thank you for joining us today.
And I'm just going to put in a really brief, great thank you to Elizabeth for all the months this year of providing great virtual training for our partners. So great job. Just didn't want the year to end without that.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. That's kind. Thanks for filling out that poll, folks. We really do appreciate it. So you have, and we take that feedback to heart. So thank you for doing that.